Bienvenidos al cuarto episodio de Librísimo, el espacio de YouTube que trata sobre las novedades editoriales en español. Hoy nos visita una escritora australiana, Kaaron Warren, que cuenta con una larga lista de reconocimientos, incluyendo el premio Shirley Jackson y el premio Peter McNamara a su trayectoria. Ha publicado 5 novelas multipremiadas y 7 colecciones de relatos. Bitters, Danza del Cementerio, es su obra más reciente, aunque su próximo libro en español es Into Bones Like Oil, como aceite en sus huesos, traducido por Pilar San Román para la Biblioteca de Carfax. Os invito a escuchar nuestra conversación. So, hello everybody and welcome to Librisimo, the YouTube space for new releases in Spanish. I am very excited because today we have a wonderful Australian author. Welcome, Kaaron Warren.
Thank you so much for having me here. I cannot wait to talk to you.
Oh, we are very, very, very happy and thrilled that you're here because one of your books, Into Bones Like Oil, which will translate Como aceite en sus huesos in Spanish, is coming up with La Biblioteca de Carfax, the Spanish wonderful publisher in the Demeter collection, with the translation of Pilar San Román. We say hi to Pilar, it's a very good friend of us. And I would like to just dive into the book, having, this wonderful opportunity to talk to you. You are joining us from Australia.
Yes.
Yes. It's very exciting.
I'm in the future. I'm in your future.
Exactly. You're from the future. So
yes.
I normally am from the future because I normally am ahead of everybody. But you're my future now. And I always start with the beginning. I like to say this is the beginning, but not the beginning of the book. The beginning of the whole thing, which is the title. And I know there's a story behind the title. I would like you to share it with us. What is it? Why did you title it Into Bones Like Oil?
Oh, yes. No, I did think really long and hard. I had this story idea for a very long time, and I had written the story. What runs through the novel, a certain element of it, is the concept of cursing, that when you do damage to other people, you are cursed, and that also sometimes you'll end up in a place that is cursed, and just even being there will curse you itself. And that is really this rooming house that these people are living in. It is a place of curses. It is a place that seeps into the bones. Once you're there, you can barely leave it. It kind of traps you there. So when I was searching for my title, really I was just looking up for quotes or words that involved that concept of the curse. And I stumbled across, I'm not so much of a Bible reader, but I stumbled across Psalm 109, which is called the Cursing Psalm. And it says, he donned curse like his garment, and it came into his midst like water, and into his bones like oil. Mm-hmm. So to me, that perfectly summed up what I wanted to say. It's so cruel. What a cruel thing to wish upon somebody, and so malevolent, I suppose. And that was the sort of thing that I wanted to capture.
Mm-hmm. I think the Bible is always a very interesting source of inspiration for horrible things, like
yes.
horror in general.
Yes. Yeah, horror in general, the stories that happen and the language used as well. Like some of the language used is just, especially when you take it out of context, which of course is what I've done here, taking things out of context, and which I do love to do with a lot of titles as well, can give them a secondary meaning, change their meaning, and become quite powerful.
Do you remember, because you just said that you've been thinking about this story for a long time, but do you remember when it was the first time that this idea came to your mind, and where was it?
Yes. So it was really a gathering of many things over probably 20 or almost 25 years. So the
Wow.
rooming house itself was a place that I stayed in Melbourne when I was visiting there for a couple of weeks, which was peopled with so many different inhabitants. And I was really struck by all these different lives that were making a future, I guess, for themselves in this place that was hidden behind big bushes. And if you looked at it from the outside, you would have no idea what's going on. But you go through through the bushes and through this front door, and inside is this microcosm of the world. And I was so fascinated, even by I guess I think I was there for 10 days. Even by my 10 days there, I was so drawn into it. I was also relieved to get back to my own reality at the end of it. And so there was that sense that I could leave this place. I didn't have to stay there. So the house itself was with me for a very long time. And just gradually, I started to people it with my characters. People I heard about, people who crossed my paths. I used to work in a shop, and sometimes it was the customers who would come in, they would say something, or there would be a tilt of their head, that sort of thing. So really over the next 15 years or so, I just slowly inhabited this place. I still didn't quite know what their story was. And I actually don't remember the exact moment when I realised that the story was going to be about when you fall asleep, the ghosts speak through you. It was just as I started to tell their story and understand who they were combined with each other and separately, the secrets that they held and the secrets that the ghosts held. Just as I started to tell all of these stories, it began to emerge that this was the central terrifying concept, I suppose you would say.
Because for those of you that, I hope you all read this book, but this book is about a particular house. I'm not sure if it's a little hotel or bed and breakfast. It's an unusual place for people a boarding house. It's an unusual place with rooms that seem bigger than what it is, because rooms appear and appear and appear, and people appear from nowhere sometimes. You just see more and more guests. And we follow, in the beginning, a woman, Dora, who has a terrible past. She's been through a extreme trauma, I would say. I don't want to give a lot of spoilers, but it's a traumatic experience she had. And she comes there and interacts with the guests and with the owner and manager. And we understand this house is more than what it seems. It has too many guests. Some of them are invisible in the sense that invisible to the eye in the beginning, but we understand some of them are ghosts. And there was a point I had to set, Kaaron, that I didn't know which character was a ghost and what was real. And then I thought maybe are all ghosts, or maybe they are all in this limbo. So I don't want to impose my own interpretation, but it's very, very interesting that this is, even though we follow Dora, there is many characters. And I would like to talk about Dora. Who is she? How she came to life? And why did you decide to make her the main character? Well, I think all of them are important, but I think we follow her mainly. So why was she the main character? What make you decide that?
Yes. Well, so for her, when I was thinking as you were talking about how far I've been working on this story and thinking about this story. So the character of Dora really has been with me for even longer, probably even 35 years, something like that. This is before I had my husband, long before I even moved away from my hometown. I had a boyfriend who was living in a caravan at the back of his sister's house. And this was a very abusive he wasn't abusive, the boyfriend, to me, but he lived in a very abusive family. The sister was abusive, that sort of thing. Now and at that time in Australia, we had a thing called safe house, which is where people would be approved by the police, and they would put a sign out the front of their house with a little yellow house on it. And if a child was in danger, they could run into this house and be safe. This was a real thing. And this horrible, abusive family had one of those signs out the front. And they had a safe house sign out the front. And I actually can't remember this or not, but I wanted to report them. And I think I did make a phone call to say they should not have this safe house. So that element of that place being not safe, it's almost me and my fears of what would happen, like how am I, not my responsibilities that I felt even as a really young person. I was very young at the time, a very young person, feeling that sense of responsibility to these children who I didn't know. And it may not happen, but I could see this future of children running for safety, running from something and then running to something more monstrous. So that element of Dora has been with me for a long time. I knew I wanted her to be someone that people could relate to the most. And I felt like a mother who had suffered and had lost everything was somebody that maybe we could relate to. I wanted her to be not like a victim to a certain extent, but also strong in herself as well, because she's still alive. You know, one of the things about her is that she's still alive. You know, she hasn't done anything incredibly drastic to herself. And I found that quite powerful as well to give that to her. But it's also taking this step into a new life as well. This old life is gone. She's come to this rooming house where she is just Dora. She is just Dora as she is in that moment. And anyone who's moved from one place to another knows what that feels like. You've probably experienced it yourself. You must have experienced it yourself. When you move to a new place and you are the person at that time, you don't need to talk about your past. Nobody knows anything about you. You are like, you're Kaaron in the present. You're in that moment. So I wanted that to be Dora as well. Like it was almost like a new start for her, fresh start.
Yeah,
almost
because
trying to forget about what happened in the past. Yeah.
this is exactly what I was thinking when I thought about Dora, that she's incredibly vulnerable in a way, but also very strong. And this contradictory personality, I think it's wonderful because we're so used to have characters that are just one thing or another, black and white, and the richness of her personality and the ups and downs that she goes through. I thought it was really refreshing for once that we don't have to think about her as just a victim or just a survivor of a traumatic experience, but someone that is trying to go on with her life, or maybe not, or maybe she's already dead and we don't know. I don't know. It's just ideas. Yes, or maybe she wishes she was dead. I mean,
yeah, well, and it has at times too. You know, there's moments in the story where she does sit there and just wish that she wasn't there and wish that she hadn't survived it. But she survives and she does carry on, and you just don't know, you know, what effect she's had on the lives. I feel like she has a positive effect on the lives of some of the people in this rooming house as well, just by her presence and by the centered nature of her moments of kindness that she has. I feel like she does affect the people around her. So it was a little bit about that, trying to give her that sense of empowerment that she can actually affect in a good way the people around her as well, and in a bad way too, of course, because she's quite selfish in lots of ways. You know, she's not just there to help other people.
Yeah, but I think that sometimes in order to survive things, you have to be very a little self-centered or self-conscious and do things that to other people may seem very egoistic or, you know, selfish, but you have to in order to move on. And what I found very interesting is where this takes place, this house. I'm not sure it's a haunted house because it's very different than from other houses that I've read in other books. But what I think is even more interesting is the connection with the shipwreck and everything related to the sea and to what happens when a ship wrecks and the leftovers of lives that happen after. And it was a wonderful kind of metaphor for what is happening in the house itself. And also like the people, the guests in that house are kind of like castaways in some sort or sense. And I thought it was extremely interesting how you use this shipwrecked theme. And I wanted to know about this. Is something that you're passionate about, the world of the ships that are, doom, and what happens after, and the sea and the power of the sea.
Yes, I'm obsessed. And I've written 2 or 3 stories about, and I'm not quite there yet with my sea stories. I think they'll always be an element of. Completely obsessed with the Cornish smugglers was one of the bits of research. I did a little bit of research for this story, one being the Cornish smugglers and the stories that are told about them, how they would deliberately cause the shipwrecks and then go and rob from the dead and the dying. Whether or not this is true or not, we're not really sure. But it's, it's the Cornish people who, in theory, do this thing. So I had this in my mind as an element of it, that I wanted that ruthlessness of stealing from the dead and the dying, as opposed to helping, which is the natural human instinct, is to help the dead and the dying, and to make sure that the people who have passed are treated with respect. And this is very much the opposite of what happens in this story. So I wanted that element to come through, definitely. And that is absolutely what it is. They are castaways. The people in my rooming house are definitely castaways. Thank you for noticing or for picking that up. And so the house itself, so in Australia, when you sometimes go for your holidays, you'll go to the coast. People will head to the coast, even though we all live close to the coast or reasonably close to. But for school holidays in particular, but all sorts of holidays, we will go to the coast, and you will hire a holiday house, or you will stay in this kind of place where you take a room and you are there, and that is your room, but you're out most of the time, so it doesn't matter how small your room is, I suppose. So that was the element that I was capturing as well. This to me is a classic sort of beach, very, very big beach home where lots of people come and go. Which is one of the reasons why it was set where it is, close to the water, with the sound. And I love that rhythmic sound. I'm obsessed with tides going out and in, and what that means, the inevitability of it, and the erosion of what lies on the sand and the beach, and what is left behind. I am very much obsessed with all of those elements of it. Having never actually lived close by to the beach, but have had many family holidays to their family and with groups of friends.
Yeah, and I also wanted to ask you about the names, and the names of the characters, and the names of the place itself, Anglesey. And
yes,
I wanted to ask you because, as I often say in this space, writing is about making decisions, and I would like to know, what make you call those characters the way you do? We have Dora, but we have Luke, we have Roy, Frecia, the Doctor, which doesn't have a name, Julia, etc., Trevor, etc. Why they're named that way, and the place itself, where those names come from?
So the place itself is just a little bit of a private joke in a certain way. The Anglesey is a sort of name that these places would have by the beach. They're given the Anglesey, they're given the ships, the ship at sea, or they're always given oceany type names. But this is my little private joke to my family, because my grandfather, his name was meant to be middle name was meant to be Ansel, Ancel, but it was misspelled, and his middle name became Angel. And he was a very, very cranky old fellow. So for his middle name to be Angel was always a bit of a family joke. So that one's a little bit of a testament to my granddad. No other reason, just to capture it that way. Now, so some of the names, Dora, I actually cannot remember how I came up with her name. I'm not really sure why, but it felt right once I realised she was Dora. Ray, in particular, was a definite person. So he was inspired by a photo. Now, this is one of these strange stories. You never know where things come from. It was an old magazine, an old cycling magazine, and there was a photo of a man called Roy, and there was one photo of him and he looked very handsome, and then the second photo and he was smiling. And, usually a smile will make you look better and more handsome. No, not this person. He smiled and all of a sudden he looked like a monster.
Oh, wow.
And it was one of these things, I took that magazine and I kept it, and I knew that this was going to be my character. This was going to be my main male character who runs this place. There's contrast in the look of handsomeness and then the look of monstrousness. And I named, so literally he is named for this poor person whose photo I kept, who I don't know who he was. He was just a cyclist of some kind. I took nothing else from him apart from his name. Luke is just a handsome kind of a name. It's a strong, handsome kind of a name. Frisia, so she was inspired by an actual customer that we used to have in the shop. Her name was Gypsy. I didn't want to call my character Gypsy the same name. But Gypsy used to come in like that with bare feet and these flowing clothes, and was definitely living in another world that wasn't really quite our world, but was always sort of lovely. I don't think she ever really bought anything because she never really had any money. But she was just quite an amazing character. And she sadly passed away. She had a really sad early death, which was really, I had sort of missed her for a few weeks, and I said, oh no, she passed away. And so I wanted to write Frisia as a kind of a testament to her, I suppose. This woman whose name I didn't really know. I think she was called Gypsy, but I'm not sure. So Frisia was just who is inspired by that character. Frisia just sounded like the sort of name that somebody like that would give herself. But all of them were very, very important going along.
Just a quick one. Why the doctor doesn't have a name?
Gosh, don't know. I think because he just wants to be the doctor. I think that's, sometimes, and it gives him that sense of importance, I suppose.
Okay.
Rather than anything personal about him. He's the doctor. He thinks it gives him an elevated sense of himself, and that other people will think of him in a more elevated way. Because, so, as simple as that,
We don't know much about him. There's nothing... Everybody has a story, kind of, but he's kind of like hidden. Yeah. And I thought, that's very interesting. And I think that, I thought about, why would it be the reason why? And it makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, just mostly that. And he is very, very secretive. I mean, I think in some ways he's in many ways, he's the most scary of all the people in this house. Exactly. Because of what he does, what he happily does without even really seeming to think about it. Clearly what he has in his past, like how he has ended up in this place, as opposed to, a London Harley Street practice or whatever, where he's making many, many, hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever. He's ended up in this place, which is, for some people, like the end of the line almost.
And I thought that was interesting because I believe that the more you say about a character, the kind of less scary it becomes, because you start to understand, maybe not fully, but somehow you start to understand or make sense. But when you don't know anything about his past and everything is just a hypothesis, is really much more scary. So I thought it was really very ingenious to think.
Oh, thank you. Well, actually, you were just talking about author choices, and that was absolutely a choice there for really that reason, for absolute that reason. I want the reader to be thinking about, well, what on earth has this person done in the past? How did he? How does he think this is okay? He's obviously had all sorts of things happen that we don't end up learning about. I mean, I think if I wrote a sequel, then we maybe get his side of the story. But exactly as you say, the more you know somebody, the less frightening they are.
Yes. And
mostly.
And I thought the painter was one of the saddest.
Yes.
But we are not going to talk about why or anything. You have to read it, really.
No.
But it's really interesting, his story. And I would sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, that is just really an important but quite small but important role, that painter, for creating that emotion to a certain extent, and for us to see how Dora responds to him, all of those elements. And that painting, I can't paint, but I want someone to do that painting for me. One day.
One day.
One day.
Can you highlight a scene or a fragment that was particularly challenging for you when you were writing it?
Oh gosh, a lot of it really was. I think that's a really good question. I think probably mostly some of the scenes where I have, and more than one of them, where my residents are asleep and I have the ghosts speak through them, and what I have the ghosts say. Like, difficult because that asked a lot of me as the author to make sure that I was moving everything forward, that it wasn't just nasty words for the sake of it, that it really was plot-wise an important part of that. But also really disturbing because I really did have to try and sit in those in the body of my character to really feel what that would be like, and to wake up with the sore throat, and to, physically myself imagine what that would be like. So that was really, and I still get very creepy feeling about that as well, to wake up and you've got a sore throat or you've got a headache. Sometimes you do wake up with a headache or a sore throat and think, well, what happened in the nighttime
Yes.
I was okay when I went to sleep, and now obviously you catch things. But sometimes I'll wake up with a headache and think, wow, you know, where have I been in the nighttime that I've
Yes.
now got a headache? So
And that was
yeah,
very
that element of it was very tricky. Yeah.
This is very interesting because, for example, I suffer migraines, and they come to me when I'm sleeping. So this really makes me think, like, what have I been doing all night, or why is it happening when I'm dreaming?
Yes.
When you're supposed to get
Yes.
the most rest, right? So
Yes.
it's incredibly unsettling and eerie. So I got that, and I was like, ooh,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
written in with reason behind.
Yes, no, that's right. And I'm also obsessed by sleep and what it does to us, and
Yes.
how awful it is when you can't sleep. Like, insomnia is just one of those awful, awful things. You imagine, sleep is healing and curative. And as you say, if you wake up and there is this migraine that you went to sleep and you're okay, and you wake up and you've got this terrible pain.
But it's also when
And so
you're the most
yes,
vulnerable.
yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Because you're not, you are not that, you're not there.
Yeah.
You're not there, and you have no control over what's happening with your
Exactly.
body, all of those sorts of things. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
fascinating thing.
And I wanted to talk about ghost stories and your relationship with ghost stories. Why you write? What's so attractive about them for you?
I have loved ghost stories since I was since I was literally able to pick up a book and read. I have loved them. I love the idea that there's the possibility. I mean, it's terrifying at the same time, but I love that little scary part of it. I love, a lot of people love being scared. I really do like that little bit of being scared. I also just love to think about really different, in very intense terms, what comes next. And the things with, if there is such a thing as ghosts, that means there's such a thing as the soul, and that means there's such a thing as an afterlife. And I guess that, at a very deep level, is one of the reasons why I'm always writing about ghosts in all the different forms, and what it means, and what would keep us here. Every time I write about ghosts, I have a different concept of what the afterlife is, and why these ghosts would still be here, and what they want and what they're doing. It's just me exploring the nature of existence at a very deep level. At a surface level, I just love ghost stories. I've always loved ghost stories. I was reading the Fontana book, anthology of ghosts, probably from about 8 or 9 years old. I was reading, I don't know if you've read that series, Fontana, and then there's also the Pan Book of Horror, which is much more extreme, more horror than ghosts. But yeah, the Fontana anthologies, just absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous stuff. So I just have always been drawn to ghost stories because anything's possible for one reason. I just love the fact that they may be watching over, that they could be present. Why are they there? It's just a very morbid, I guess, curiosity about it all.
One of the things that I always thought about ghost stories is that what you just said, it's something magical there. Anything is possible. And precisely, it's probably, the difference between science fiction and fantasy. They said, if it's magic, it's fantasy. If it's something possible within the realm of the science, it's science fiction. But ghosts are something that you can't rule out. It's magic. It seems like magic, but it's really not. So they're just right there in that frontier. And I think that's what it's so captivating. I don't know if you agree.
No, yeah, absolutely. And you can't disprove that ghosts
Exactly.
exist. You can't disprove it. You can try to prove it. And I don't know if you've been on the sort of ghost tours I've been in haunted asylums and haunted places where they do those tours where you go with the electronic equipment and it buzzes and it makes noises and, translates words and all those sorts of things. So they're trying to use science to prove the existence of ghosts. I'm not sure if it really works or not. You certainly get a feeling about it, but I'm pretty sure no one's ever proven the existence of ghosts, but no one's ever disproven either. I mean, of course, there's an element in this book later on where I do talk about the proving of ghosts. I love this. I can't remember the name of the hypothesis, but that when you die with the combination of a safe, and you are supposed to come back and tell somebody that combination and they can open the safe. There's a particular name to it and I can't remember, but I'm fascinated by that as well. So I was exploring that a little bit in this novella.
We love ghosts.
That it's possible.
Ghosts.
We love ghosts.
We love ghosts.
Love ghosts.
They're close to our hearts. And I would like to talk to you just, we're going towards the end, but I would like to, this is a little technical, but I like to talk about process with the authors that come, because I think we can all learn very much from this. And I would like to know if when you write a story normally, in particular for this one, for Into Bones Like Oil, did you knew the whole story when you were starting to write, or you start writing it and then the end came kind of sort of organically, easily as you were, and this happens in all your books, or just happened to this book? I don't know. Yeah.
Yes, every book is really different. Some books, like my latest novel, The Under History, I knew definitely how it was going to end. I didn't know exactly what was going to lead to that ending, but I knew what the result was going to be without any doubt whatsoever. I knew that for sure. But that's very unusual. Mostly I need to write the story and then sometimes write it 3 or 4 times until I get to the point where I know how this story is going to end. So this one was very much the case of that, Into Bones Like Oil. I had probably 4 or 5 different possible endings that I wrote and rewrote and rewrote until I found the one that I was satisfied with, that felt satisfying to me, but also I hope is satisfying to the reader. Because I think that's really important. I talk to writing students about this as well. Obviously, we write for ourselves. Like you need to have a joy in the writing, even if you're writing something very dark and frightening. You need to have a certain joy and enjoyment in that process, which means it needs to be about yourself. But I think at some stage that needs to shift, and you need to think about, well, how do I make sure the reader gets a similar enjoyment? So I think that was very much with this one. I got to the end and had a couple of different endings that didn't feel satisfying to me. So I wrote and I rewrote until I found that ending. But that took a long time. I built this story. I did take a little note about this because I thought you maybe would ask me about it. So the process for writing this was different to many of the others. So the way I've laid it out, as you know, is that each day starts with breakfast. So the place that I stayed 25 years ago, or however long ago it was, and many of these rooming houses will provide breakfast as part of your rent. And sometimes this is the only meal a day that people have, and it's the same food almost every day. So when I was staying there, the woman who ran the place would say, today it's bacon and eggs. And then the next day it was sausages and bacon. And the next day it was eggs and sausages. So each day was very much a routine of what you would have for breakfast. You knew what day it was depending on what was for breakfast. And I knew I wanted to replicate that in this book. So once I laid out my breakfasts and then I would imagine the characters. And as you say, they do slowly appear. We start with Dora, and then there's a couple more people, and then there's more people, and then my breakfast room is full of people. So I built it that way. I built it around the breakfasts, and as each person joined, and I imagined what their pasts were, and I imagined what secrets they held and what secrets the ghosts would have them say.
Perfect, because I was going to ask you how many versions of the story you wrote before handle the final one.
I probably wrote at least 4 or 5, but before I sent it to my publisher, Meerkat Publishing. Then editing with Tricia Reeks, the publisher there, probably another 2 or 3, I think, until we got to the final. So it was close to final by the time I sent it to Tricia. And then she just really had some tweaks and some questions and that sort of thing. Mind you, we still had the wonderful translator had questions as well. Notice some details of things that I had incorrect. even like a number of books. I have 5 books, and then later on there's 7 books. And this wonderful translator said, "Oh, there should be 7." I went, "Oh yes, thank you." So in the next version of this, the English version, we will have to fix some of those errors. Because I guess translation is you have to read in such detail, don't you? You can't skim a single word. So I think that was an element of it, but quite brilliant. I was so impressed by the attention to detail and then the perfection that.
I wanted to ask you, so Into Bones Like Oil was shortlisted for the Shirley Jackson Award and the Bram Stoker Award, and it won the Aurelius Award for those of you in Spain, in the Spanish-speaking market. It's the annual literary award for Australian science fiction, fantasy, and horror fiction, and it has different categories. It's a little bit like the Ignotus in Spain. So I would like to know about what it meant for you to be shortlisted in those awards and to win the Aurelius Award for this particular book.
No, amazing. I know, really. It's so gratifying. Like, it shouldn't really matter, and that's not why we do this.
Yeah.
But particularly, I mean, for the Aurealis, absolutely, that's a jury voted thing. So it's not, you know, you don't have to go out there and ask for votes or whatever. It is purely voted on jury, and that's the same with the Shirley Jacksons and the Bram Stokers. Oh, the Bram Stokers, I think there is it's public vote as well as jury vote. Incredibly gratifying, especially for the Shirley Jacksons. Because I know, like, I adore, whenever I see those Shirley Jackson shortlists come out, it's absolutely my favourite sort of fiction. It's Shirley Jackson style fiction. And so to be put in the same category as that incredible writer who's has been an inspiration since I was really young, and as long as I've been a reader almost, is incredibly gratifying. And just helps you to carry on in those harder times when you're feeling a bit low in self-esteem, a little bit, what am I doing here? Why do I even try? I don't know. I think every writer goes through those. So it helps with that imposter syndrome. It helps with the down times. I can look at my awards that I've won and everything I've been shortlisted for and feel really proud and believe that I'm not hitting myself. I think you have to have a certain confidence in your own self, and the awards help me build and then rebuild that confidence in what I'm doing. Yeah.
I have just 3 more questions very fast. We always finish with those because I think that leaves the whole conversation in a high note. I would like for you to share, if possible, what you're working on right now.
I'm working on my next novel, which is a crime story with ghosts.
Wow.
I can't live without the ghosts. Even more ghosts than usual in this one. So about a couple who are traveling the country and solving crimes as they go, and the woman uses all of her knowledge and the man uses ghosts. They send him messages, etc. So yes, it's that. It's very, very complicated. I tend to write very complicated puzzles of books, and this is another puzzle book that I'm about a third of the way through and really, really enjoying.
Great.
Yes. But also, I'm also working on, I always work on short stories at the same time. So I've got some short stories upcoming that I had worked on and sold in the time. It's always good, I think, not to have a couple of things going at once, so you're not completely focused on one text. You can use all those other ideas to go into other places.
We're big fans of short stories here too. So I would like to know, who would you like to see in Librisimo, if you could recommend someone? It doesn't have to be someone that you know personally, but if it's alive, it's better.
Oh gosh, this is a hard one because there's so many people. Like I would always lean towards recommending one of my very dear writer friends, if that's okay.
Yes.
And so in particular, I would recommend my dear friend J.S. Brookelar, who writes amazing fiction. Her latest novel is called Remedy, and it's just very, 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 very layered and amazing. So she would be my major recommendation.
Great, fantastic. And just the last one. Could you share with us the last book you were reading that wow you?
Well, actually, I picked out two. I know you
Okay.
did warn me you're going to ask me this question. Is that okay? Can I say two?
Sure, of course.
Because one is recent and one is very, very, very old.
Okay.
So the recent one is Sundial by Kaaron Warren,
Okay.
who
Yeah.
I believe is coming up to at 30th, which is very exciting. Just a wonderful, very dark. She's an incredible layered horror writer, but she's so wonderful with character and relationships, and I absolutely love that one. The very, very old one is something that I realized that has inspired my works from a very young age. I think probably from 8 or 9, I first started reading this series. All of my work, I think, is inspired by it to a certain extent because it's all about a story within a story within a story, which is something I adore. So it's 1001 Nights. It's the Arabian Nights.
The Arabian Nights.
Absolutely amazing. And I only just realized recently that I did not have a good set of these stories. And then I found one at a secondhand book sale. So I found 4 books in the folio series, and I am reading avidly. I cannot stop reading. I keep reading all my family aloud these amazing stories. So yes, I just absolutely adore it beyond all measure, and definitely one of my major inspirations as an author.
Wow, that's
So they're very dark and nasty
Yes.
stories. Oh my gosh, these stories are so terrible.
I know.
The story of the 5th brother who's the butcher,
Yeah.
and he gets accused of selling human meat, which he didn't do. But anyway, all sorts of fabulous stuff. I'm absolutely loving it. So that's my 2 recommendations.
And we have to say that you are coming to Spain very soon this summer for the Celsius Festival.
Yes, I'm so excited. I can't wait. I have friends who've been going for the last 2 or 3 years, and they cannot stop talking about how much they love it. The greatest week of their lives. I cannot wait. I'm so excited.
And we're so happy that you're coming to Spain to see your readers, to talk to other people in the industry, other authors, and we just wish you the best. And hopefully more of your books will be translated into Spanish. We will have you over again. And
wonderful.
We wish you the best.
Thank you so much. I really cannot wait to get over there and connect up with readers and some of your authors there as well.
And all of you that are there, please check out Como Aceite en sus Huesos, la Biblioteca de Carfax. Thank you very much and see you in the next episode.